everyone, it's your professor here, and tonight we're going to be moving ahead to chapter 12, which is the next unit. Again, this chapter, there was a little bit of an error on the syllabus. It says chapter 10 and 12. However, we are strictly going to be covering chapter 12. So if you didn't watch this video, then you're not going to know that. You're going to be in trouble. But obviously you're watching it, so you'll be fine. Chapter 12 is dealing with Carl Rogers, who is a very, very famous individual. He actually is considered the father of the school of humanism and has some very, very important contributions that you're going to learn about. The thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight, again, is going to pertain a little bit more to real world application, or what to actually do with some of the things that I'm teaching you guys, especially when we're talking about working in the field with individuals with personality disorders, which is a population that I do work with quite a lot in my job, and that I'm sure you're going to be encountering a lot in a variety of professions. Carl Rogers is very, very famous for the idea of unconditional positive regard. This is a very famous theory that he put out there. And basically, unconditional positive regard is this idea that those of us who are working as helpers really have an obligation to meet people where they are, to very genuinely and very positively encounter people. So in other words, we're supposed to not necessarily bring our biases. We're not supposed to bring negativity. We're supposed to look for the good in everyone and to really be okay with every person. So even if someone is sitting across from you saying, I beat my wife yesterday and I killed somebody 10 years ago, or whatever it is, we're still supposed to sort of be value free, be judgment free, and be there as a therapeutic ally for the person. This was his theory. A couple things about that I did want to discuss with you guys, because I'm sure that as you're going on in your education, and I'm sure that you probably already have heard about this idea, I know that when I was first learning about it, I thought that this was supposed to be sort of black and white, what we ideally were supposed to be doing. And I think that it definitely is an ideal. So I think that, of course, there is no such thing as a perfect person. I think, unless you were Jesus Christ himself, you really wouldn't necessarily be able to always, in all situations, be completely free of any negativity or any judgment towards another person, especially when we're talking about individuals with personality disorders. You guys really should know that many times one of your first clues that this person has a personality disorder is that they're going to upset you in some way. In many cases, they may offend you, they may rile you up in some way, you may have a negative reaction towards them. Again, this is called countertransference. That was a Freudian idea that we've talked about in the past, being aware when we're having a negative reaction to somebody that we're working with. And it's okay. That's one thing that I want you guys to understand, is that you're going to learn along the way that it is an ideal that we want to regard everyone, and we certainly do. But don't beat yourself up if you don't always have 100% positive reaction to people. I think not only is it human to have that kind of feeling sometimes, but I think it's actually beneficial and important of a tool for us to use. So, for example, what I'm saying is that if we were sort of meeting every single person like, with this positive sort of nothing but rainbows and puppies and ponies, well, we can't necessarily know what this individual's experience is in their life. And what I mean to say is, you as the helper, you as the professional, whatever role that is, whether it's a therapist, a nurse, a teacher, whatever, you are obligated in a sense, okay? You not only are you professionally obligated, but you are being paid to be in a certain level of professional role where it's your job to find the good in this person. It's your job to work with this person. Well, people in this individual's life don't have that same obligation. So what I mean to say is that if you are noticing and working with an individual that they are really upsetting you, or they are really sort of rubbing you the wrong way, this is an important thing to be aware of, because you sort of have to be there working with them, but people in their life don't. And this gives you a really, really important insight into someone's world, right? Because if you are having a hard time sitting across from this person, can you imagine what it must be for other people in their life? And this is sort of the cycle that it creates for people with personality disorders, because in many cases, they lack what we call insight, which is that understanding about ourselves. By the way, insight is something that is going to be so important for you guys to have as individuals working in the field. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about it here as we go on, but you've always got to be aware of what's going on in your own head. You've got to be okay with confronting and understanding the parts of yourself that maybe aren't so great or aren't perfect, and understand that it's okay, you're human too, and sort of work through it. So for example, one thing I wanted to mention in that regard is that, well, back when I was a graduate intern, I was working with just a brilliant therapist. He had been in the field for so many years, probably 30 plus years, and was retiring, and I did get an opportunity to work with him. It was very, very beneficial. And one thing he told me was, when somebody really sort of rubs you the wrong way in a helping role, it's usually because there's part of yourself that you're seeing in this other person. And that's something that's really, really important and interesting to note, guys. And I'm sure that even if, you're not planning on going into this kind of role, maybe you can think about somebody in your own life, your own experience, whether it's now or in the past, who really has sort of upset you or just agitated you in some way. And when you boil it down and you break it down, many times you can find out a little bit more about yourself. And this is all part of that growth process necessary for you to be a really excellent helper. So, for example, when I was working with this therapist, I had a client who was a younger guy, just very, very narcissistic, characteristically narcissistic. And this tends to be a personality disorder that I personally and professionally have a very difficult time. This is my sort of Achilles heel as a clinician. I have a very, very hard time finding the empathy that I need, and there's just something about working with these individuals that is very challenging for me. And so I'm aware of that, and I understand that, and it does take a little bit more sort of talking through in my own head to get to that level where I can be that value-free person, that, unconditional positive regard. So anyway, I had this young man, and I was doing just sort of a basic, what we call an intake, which is where you're just initially meeting with someone coming in, whether they're coming into therapy or coming into a program, whatever it is, and you're getting some basic information. He just was very, very arrogant, and he really was, I don't want to say making me feel, because I don't believe anyone can make you feel anything, but the feeling that I was getting from him, I was feeling incompetent. I was feeling that he was challenging my authority, and of course at that time, being an intern, I felt like already kind of insecure. I'm like, oh, I don't really know what I'm doing yet. I'm not completely comfortable. So he just sort of struck a nerve with me, and I was really feeling very negative about him and was expressing some of this kind of negative thoughts. And the other therapist, this experienced guy, stopped me and said, listen, let's take a step back here. How did you feel, when you were dealing with this guy? And I said, well, honestly, I felt really stupid. I felt incompetent. I felt like I didn't really know what I was doing, and I was questioning myself. And he said to me, you have a need to feel smart. You have a need to feel like you're the smartest person in the room. Okay. That was very, very difficult to hear. I mean, and truly, you guys, when you're working in the field, and particularly if you go on in psychology, you are going to have those moments where people are going to kind of call you out on some of your own stuff. And that is the most valuable thing that can happen for you in terms of developing you not only as a person, but also as a clinician. So I really then had to, of course, at first I was like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. But then I really stopped and I thought, you know what? I was able to sort of go back into myself, into my own life and past, and say, wow, okay, yeah, you're right. This is something that I need to feel, or maybe have sort of a need to put out there. And so this individual also sort of had the need to do that, and that's how we clashed. That's why it wasn't really working. So not only was I able to sort of grow a little bit myself, but I was also able to get an insight into what this guy's sort of world was like, because people probably didn't enjoy being around him. And I also was then able to get rid of a lot of that negative feeling that he gave me. And I was able to understand, okay, well, this is somebody who doesn't feel competent themselves. This is someone who needs to feel better than me. He needs to feel better than people because he is feeling so small and so insignificant. And in that way, I was able to sort of get past that upsetting sort of facade or superficial, level, and get into the part of him that needed help, and to remind myself, this is someone who is coming in for help. They need help, and it is my job to provide that. And so what I mean to say, guys, is that, yes, it's wonderful and good to believe that we're going to always have this sort of 100% positive, sort of a reaction to every single person, but I don't think that it's entirely realistic to say that we're going to, and I don't think that it's always helpful to the person either. Another thing that's very challenging to do when you're working with individuals with personality disorders is to set good boundaries or set appropriate boundaries, but to do it in a way that is loving. And so, despite the fact that these may be individuals who kind of beat us up at times, we kind of bear the brunt, unfortunately, of some of their negative feelings and emotions and even behaviors in a lot of situations. We cannot lose sight of the fact that we are in a helping role and we are accepting that responsibility. At the same time, though, we are not there to be a punching bag. And so it kind of becomes a fine line sometimes. And I often, in particular, I've mentioned to you guys, work in the emergency room. I many times deal with a lot of borderline personality disorder. I deal with a lot of narcissistic personality disorder. And particularly when I'm dealing with an individual who does not want to be there, I'm forcing them to be there. People get angry, they get pissed off, and a lot of times they do lash out at you. They come at you a certain way, and our natural, human reaction emotion is to get sort of defensive, to get angry, whatever it is, and we have to sort of supersede that. But the other thing, guys, is that we are not there to take it all on. Okay, so what we have to do in working with an individual is to find an appropriate way to set a limit, but at the same time to do it in a loving way. And I very, very often, it's difficult, you guys, I'm telling you, I very often will let someone know, listen, I understand that you're upset. I'm really, really sorry that everything is going very badly in your life. I am here to help you, and I will. I truly will give you every single thing that I can. However, I am not here to be your punching bag. I'm not here for you to put me down. I'm not here for you to take everything out on me. Okay? I will not be that person. However, if you want to go ahead and work with me, we have to work. So sometimes I will even say, we have to work together for the next however long. If you want it to be really nasty and awful every time I come in the room, I can't help that. Okay? So if we go back to the last week's lecture when I was telling you guys about control, this sort of ties into the control issue. And what I'll do is sort of put it to the person that, listen, you're the one in control here. If you can control how it's going to be, if you want it to be this nasty sort of thing every time, that's on you. It's completely on you. But if you are willing to let things be cool, I'm sorry that you're upset. Let's just start over right here, right now. And you'd be surprised. That can be really, really useful, really effective. But it's difficult because when you're dealing with individuals with personality disorder, there tends to be a lot of game playing, unfortunately, a lot of manipulation. And many times this is not something that's done on a conscious basis. The person isn't sitting there thinking, okay, well, if I do this or if I say that, I'm going to get this reaction. It just is their style of behavior. It's their style of relating to people. And you have to understand that it comes from somewhere. It serves a purpose. At some point in their life, and truly these are individuals many times who came from very difficult circumstances, they have developed these behaviors and tendencies as what we call adaptive. These are adaptive tendencies, meaning that somehow in their life these have served a purpose for them. It's a survival on some level. They've learned that in order to meet their needs, they are going to have to hustle, even if it's on an unconscious level. So what I mean to say is, in dealing with them and their behaviors, it is a challenge. It's a balancing act to be loving and to be there, but also to make it known that, listen, I'm not here to be walked all over, to meet them where they are, and also to just constantly remind yourself. And I'm telling you, this is something that really takes a lot of conscious effort, because I think when you're first new, you tend to think, and certainly when you're in school, you tend to think, oh, well, I would just love everybody. But it's very different when you're in the moment and people are challenging you and they're doing things to you or saying things to you that are very, very frustrating and very challenging. And so what I want you guys to understand is that you're only human, but recognizing your emotions and sort of having the ability to constantly monitor yourself, talk to yourself, and sort of work through your own inner dialogue when you're dealing with individuals with personality disorders, this is all part of the process. And it doesn't mean that you don't unconditionally regard everyone. It means that you're human, and it means that you are striving to find the good in that person. Okay, guys, well, I'm going to wrap up here. I really hope that this has been helpful for you, and I actually am really enjoying sort of giving you guys a little bit more of my own feedback on what you can actually do out there in the world or what's going on in the world. I definitely am open to your feedback on that. If you would prefer that I lecture more from the chapter, if you think that would be more helpful to you, definitely hit me up by email, let me know. The other point I wanted to just quickly make to you guys is that I check my email throughout the week. I try to do every single day. There are times that I may miss a day just due to being busy. If you need to get a hold of me quickly, please don't feel like you can't text me. Like, just text me. I have my phone. It's okay. It's not weird. Don't worry about it. Just because sometimes I feel bad if I will, not see your email, or if a couple days go by. It's a lot easier rather than you sitting there waiting and wondering what's going on. Just go ahead and shoot me a text. All right. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.